I never expected to see him again after that night. This was a mistake, he whispered, before disappearing from my apartment. 3 months later, his engagement announcement was splashed across every magazine. But yesterday, he showed up at my door saying he's calling everything off. For me, I'm always rushing. That was my life before everything changed. Up at 5:30 every morning, quick workout, shower, coffee to go, and out the door by 7:15 to beat the worst of the traffic. My friends used to joke that I had my life scheduled down to the minute, and honestly, they weren't wrong. As a marketing director at a tech startup, every moment counted. Between client meetings, strategy sessions, and late nights perfecting pitches, romance wasn't even on my radar. Dating apps sat unused on my phone, collecting digital dust while I climbed the corporate ladder. Before I tell you how a single night changed my entire life, make sure to follow for more real life stories that prove love finds a way against all odds. My mom always told me, "Baby girl, you've got to work twice as hard to get half as far." And I took those words to heart. Being a Black woman in the tech industry meant I had to be exceptional just to be considered equal. So I was. I graduated top of my class, landed the job everyone wanted, and at 29, I was the youngest director my company had ever appointed. My apartment downtown was my sanctuary, minimalist, elegant, with a view of the city I'd earned through years of dedication. I had my 5 year plan mapped out perfectly: make executive leadership by 32, start my own agency by 35. Love was a distraction I couldn't afford. That night wasn't even supposed to happen. The charity gala was just another networking opportunity. Shake hands, exchange business cards, secure potential clients. I remember standing by the champagne fountain in my red dress, the one splurge I'd allowed myself after landing our biggest client, scanning the room for the next strategic conversation. I never expected to make eye contact with him across the crowded ballroom. I definitely never expected that brief moment to completely derail the life I had so carefully planned. But that's the thing about life-changing moments, isn't it? They never announce themselves. They just arrive, disguised as ordinary seconds, and before you know it, nothing will ever be the same again. I spotted him before he saw me, tall, confident, with the kind of presence that quieted a room without trying. I knew who James Patterson was, of course. Everyone in the business world did. His tech innovations had revolutionized sustainable energy, landing him on every 30 under 40 list and building a fortune that made other millionaires look middle class. But magazines don't capture the way his eyes crinkle slightly when he smiles, or how intently he listens when someone speaks to him. We ended up at the same auction table, bidding on a weekend getaway package to raise money for education in underserved communities. When he outbid me by $10,000, I couldn't help but laugh and whisper, "Show off." I didn't expect him to hear me, but he turned, eyebrow raised, smile playing at the corner of his lips. "Not showing off," he said quietly, "just passionate about the cause." That's how it started, a simple conversation about educational inequality that somehow drifted to childhood memories, favorite books, and dreams we'd never told anyone. Hours passed in what felt like minutes. The glittering crowd faded to background noise as we created our own universe in that corner of the ballroom. "You don't mince words, do you?" he asked after I challenged his take on corporate responsibility. "Can't afford to," I replied. "In my experience, directness saves everyone time." Something shifted in his expression then: respect, curiosity, interest. When dinner ended and guests began filtering toward the exits, I was surprised to find the room half empty. I made my excuses, saying I should head home, already calculating the sleep I'd lose before tomorrow's 8 a.m. meeting. "Let me give you a ride," he offered. When I hesitated, he added, "No expectations, just conversation. I feel like we've only scratched the surface." Against all my better judgment, I said yes. In his car, a surprisingly modest electric sedan, we drove along the waterfront, talking about everything and nothing. When he asked if I wanted to grab a late coffee at a 24-hour diner, I checked my watch, thought about tomorrow's schedule, and for once in my life, decided the schedule could wait. I never make impulsive decisions. But that night, as we sat in a vinyl booth under fluorescent lights, drinking mediocre coffee, I made an exception, one that would change everything. The diner closed at 2 a.m., but neither of us was ready for the night to end. We stood on the sidewalk, streetlights casting a soft glow on his face as he asked if I wanted to see his place in the city. It wasn't a line. There was something almost vulnerable in how he asked, like he was extending more than just an invitation. I have an early meeting, I said automatically, my responsible side kicking in. But then I looked at him, really looked, and added, but I could reschedule it. His penthouse was exactly what you'd expect from a billionaire. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than my car, art I recognized from museum exhibitions. But what struck me was how lived in it felt. Books with dog-eared pages, a half-finished chess game set up in the corner, coffee mugs on the kitchen counter. "Do you want something to drink?" he asked, suddenly seeming unsure of himself, like he didn't often bring people to this private space. We ended up on his balcony with glasses of wine, watching the city lights below us, talking about our childhoods. His privileged but lonely, mine humble but rich with family. He told me about losing his mother young, about the pressure of taking over the family business, about wanting to make a difference beyond just accumulating wealth. I shared stories about growing up in Detroit, about my mother working 3 jobs to put me through college, about the responsibility I felt to honor her sacrifices. "I don't usually tell people these things," he said softly, his hand finding mine in the darkness. "I don't usually listen," I admitted, making him laugh. The kiss happened naturally, like the conclusion of a sentence we'd been building together all night. What followed was unhurried, deliberate, each touch a question, each response an answer. In his bedroom, with the city skyline glittering behind us, we discovered each other slowly, finding connection that went beyond physical. Afterward, lying in sheets that probably cost more than my rent, he traced patterns on my shoulder and told me his dreams. Not the corporate goals or acquisition plans, but the real ones. About creating technology that could help people, about finding someone who saw him as more than his bank account. I fell asleep, curled against him, feeling strangely at home. When morning light filtered through the windows, I woke to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, already dressed, staring out at the city with a troubled expression I hadn't seen before. "I need to go," he said, without looking at me. His voice had changed, distant, formal. "I'll have my driver take you home." I stood in my apartment, still wearing last night's dress, hearing his final words echo in my head. "This was a mistake. I'm sorry, but this can't happen again." No explanation, no real goodbye, just those cutting words and the silent car ride where his driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror with something like pity. The rational part of me understood. People like James Patterson don't end up with marketing directors from Detroit. We exist in different stratospheres. But understanding didn't stop the sting of rejection, of being made to feel like something discardable, a regrettable lapse in judgment. I gave myself exactly one day to feel it all, the hurt, the anger, the embarrassment. I called in sick for the first time in 3 years, ordered takeout, and watched terrible reality TV in my pajamas. By evening, I deleted his contact information from my phone and promised myself I wouldn't Google him. By morning, I was back at work, throwing myself into projects with renewed intensity. "You seem different," my assistant commented 2 weeks later. "More focused." She wasn't wrong. Nothing sharpens your ambition quite like having a billionaire tell you you're a mistake. I channeled everything into my career, secured 3 major clients, developed an innovative campaign strategy that the CEO himself praised, and started mentoring younger women in the company. Then came the announcement exactly 3 months after our night together. I wasn't looking for it. I kept my promise about not searching his name, but it was impossible to miss. His face was suddenly everywhere: magazine covers, business news, social media. Tech billionaire James Patterson engaged to heiress Victoria Wellington. The headlines varied, but the story was always the same: a perfect match. 2 powerful families uniting, America's new power couple. I stared at the photos. Him in tailored suits, her with flawless blonde hair, and diamonds that probably cost more than my parents' house. They looked compatible, like two people from the same world who understood the rules. In every photo, his smile never quite reached his eyes, but I told myself that was just me seeing what I wanted to see. Isn't that the guy from the charity gala? My friend Keisha asked, flipping through a magazine during our lunch date. The one you were talking to all night? Different guy, I lied, taking the magazine and changing the subject. Summer turned to fall. I got promoted, bought a new car, started taking a photography class on weekends, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I dated a few men, nothing serious, but enough to prove to myself that I was moving on. The engagement was a 9-day wonder in the media, but as winter approached, new coverage emerged. Rumors of tension, postponed wedding dates, photos where they barely looked at each other. I tried not to notice, tried not to care. When my mother asked if I was seeing anyone during our weekly calls, I told her I was focused on building something lasting, my career, my life on my terms. There's more to life than work, baby, she'd say. I know, Mom, I'd reply, not entirely convinced. I was healing, growing, moving forward. Life was returning to its orderly, scheduled rhythm until that rainy Tuesday evening when my doorbell rang, and I opened it to find James Patterson standing there soaking wet, looking like a man who'd run out of options. I made a terrible mistake, he said, rain dripping from his hair. And I don't mean that night, I mean every day since. I couldn't process what was happening. James Patterson, engaged billionaire, man who'd walked out on me, who'd called our night together a mistake, was standing at my door looking wrecked. His usually perfect suit was rumpled, his hair disheveled. For a man whose image was managed down to the pixel in media appearances, he looked startlingly human. Can I come in? He asked quietly when I just stared at him. My brain screamed, no. My hand pulled the door wider. He stood awkwardly in my living room, taking in the space, so different from his penthouse with its modest furniture and overflowing bookshelves. Water dripped from his coat onto my hardwood floor. You shouldn't be here, I finally said, finding my voice. Your fiancé. There's no fiancé anymore, he interrupted. I called it off yesterday. The news hadn't broken yet. Of course it hadn't. I was getting the story before the media, before the world knew that America's power couple was finished. It was never real, he continued, running a hand through his wet hair. The engagement was arranged. Our families have been pushing for it for years. Her father's company and mine. The merger would have created the largest clean energy conglomerate in the hemisphere. So I was right, I said, anger suddenly rising. It was about business. Yes, he admitted, not defending himself. After that night with you, I panicked. What we had was real, so real it terrified me. I've spent my life following a script, the right schools, the right company, the right connections. You weren't in the script, so you ran back to the safety of your world, I finished for him. He nodded, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. I thought I could do it. Go through with the merger, the marriage, the life everyone expected. Then I saw you. Saw me? At the technology conference last week, you were presenting your company's new campaign. You didn't see me, but I was there, watching you speak with such passion, such authenticity. I realized I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life, marrying someone I don't love, while the woman I can't stop thinking about was out there living her truth. My heart hammered in my chest. And Victoria, what about her? Relieved, actually, he said, with a sad smile. Turns out she's been seeing her personal trainer for months. We were both trapped in the same charade. He stepped closer, still keeping a respectful distance. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve another chance. But I had to tell you that you weren't a mistake. Walking away from you was. I wrapped my arms around myself, processing his words, unsure if this was reality or some elaborate dream my subconscious had created. I need time, I whispered. This is a lot. He nodded, reaching for the door. I understand, but I'm not running away this time. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be waiting. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts, calls, notifications, all because someone had snapped a photo of James entering my apartment building. By noon, my name was trending, attached to headlines like Mystery Woman Behind Patterson Wellington Split and The Black Woman Who Stole a Billionaire's Heart. The speculation was wild, invasive, and mostly wrong. Turn off your phone, my best friend Keisha advised when she came over with ice cream and wine. This will blow over. But it didn't. James's family released a statement expressing disappointment in his impulsive decision and concern about certain influences. Victoria's father pulled out of merger talks, causing James's company stock to temporarily plummet. Business channels debated whether his personal choices were destroying his professional legacy. 3 days after his appearance at my door, James called. "I'm sorry," he said, sounding exhausted. "I never wanted to drag you into this circus." "I'm a big girl," I replied, though truthfully being labeled a homewrecker and having paparazzi camped outside my building was testing my limits. "But your family seems determined to paint me as the villain in this story." "They don't know you," he said firmly. "They're protecting what they understand. Business, alliances, appearances. I've spent my life trying to please them, and it's cost me every chance at genuine happiness." We agreed to meet, not at my place or his, but at a small cafe on the outskirts of the city, owned by a friend of mine who promised discretion. Sitting across from each other, away from cameras and expectations, we finally had the conversation we should have had months ago. "I need to know if this is real," I said, watching his face carefully, "or if I'm just your rebellion against a life you feel trapped in, because I won't be someone's experiment in breaking free." "You're not an experiment," he said, reaching for my hand. "You're the most real thing in my life." That night, I felt more myself with you than I have with anyone. That's what scared me. We talked for hours about what a relationship between us would actually mean, the scrutiny, the assumptions people would make, the pressure his family would put on both of us, the different worlds we came from, and whether they could truly merge. "I need you to understand something," I told him. "I won't change who I am to fit into your world. I won't straighten my hair for galas or stay quiet when your friends make problematic comments. I'm proud of where I come from, who I am. I would never ask you to change," he said, looking almost offended. "It's your authenticity that made me fall for you. I'm tired of a world where everyone wears masks. You're the only person who's ever seen the real me and still wanted to know more." As the cafe closed around us, we faced the question that had been hanging between us all night. Were we brave enough to choose each other, knowing the complications that would follow? Or would we retreat to our separate worlds, always wondering what might have been? We didn't jump into anything right away. That night at the cafe, we decided to take things slowly, to build something real, away from the cameras and speculation. James rented a small apartment in my neighborhood, determined to prove he was serious about creating a life that wasn't defined by his family name or bank account. For 3 months, we dated like normal people, movie nights, cooking disasters in my kitchen, long walks where we talked about everything from childhood memories to our deepest fears. It wasn't easy. The media eventually moved on to other scandals, but his family wasn't as quick to forgive. His mother refused to meet me for the first 6 months. His father threatened to remove him from the company board. But James stood firm, attending board meetings with clear vision and innovative ideas that even his critics couldn't dismiss. Slowly, respect began to replace resistance. On my side, friends worried I was setting myself up for heartbreak. My mother, ever protective, asked pointed questions about his intentions. "Men like that," she warned, "they play in worlds we don't understand." But when she finally met him over Sunday dinner at her house, watching him help with dishes and genuinely engage with family stories, something shifted. "He looks at you like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life," she told me later. A year after that rainy night when he showed up at my door, James and I moved into a new place together. Not his penthouse or my apartment, but somewhere that was ours, with spaces that reflected both our lives. I still work at my company now as Vice President of Creative Strategy. He still runs his, though he's restructured it to focus more on sustainable technologies for underserved communities. We face challenges, of course. There are still events where I'm the only Black woman in the room, where people assume I'm there in some professional capacity rather than as his partner. There are family gatherings where tensions simmer beneath polite conversation. But every night when it's just us, no expectations, no judgments, I know we made the right choice. What I've learned through all of this is that real love isn't about finding someone who fits perfectly into the life you've planned. It's about finding someone who makes you brave enough to imagine a different life altogether. Sometimes the greatest mistake you can make is walking away from something that feels too real, too challenging, too transformative. So if you're facing a choice between the safe path and the one that terrifies you with its potential for both heartbreak and profound joy, choose courage. Choose the path that might break your heart but will definitely expand it. Because in the end, we regret not the mistakes we made, but the chances we never took. If my story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the words, "This was a mistake." Share your unexpected love stories in the comments below.